Hello, I'm Hannah, and this is Hannah's Books. For today's video, I'd like to finish the series of alphabet tags created by Jim at Jim's Reading Books and Stuff. I'll link down in the comments to his S to Z tag, and I'll also list my own answers to the first two parts of his alphabet trilogy of tags. Some people are responding in 3 separate videos to his 3 separate sections, but other people have made just 1 or 2 videos combining the separate sections. All these ways work. Give it a try if you haven't already. So let's get to the prompts. The first one is S is for science fiction. What is your favorite science fiction novel? I'm not a huge science fiction fan, and because I haven't enjoyed the few books I've tried, I rarely pick up novels in that genre. Perhaps I ought to give them more chance, but there are so many books still to read, even in my very favorite genres, that I just don't foresee picking up much science fiction for quite a while. I have enjoyed the books of Octavia Butler. I know several of you here on BookTube are reading her books Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents, 2 other books of hers that I find really powerful. But for this question, I'll point to Butler's novel Kindred, first published, I believe, in 1979, which is a combination of historical novel and time travel, only sort of science fiction. Dana is a young woman living in Southern California in the 1970s. But she finds herself mysteriously pulled into the world of a Maryland plantation, where she has to grapple with the dynamics of antebellum slavery from the perspective of a 20th century Black woman who has lived through the Civil Rights Movement. It's not terribly uncommon for contemporary fiction to use ghosts or something magical or supernatural in stories about the past. 2 Black women writers who've done that kind of work especially well are Toni Morrison and Jesmyn Ward. The work uses mystical presences or happenings in a primarily symbolic or metaphorical way. That's not what's happening in Butler's Kindred. Dana's literal time travel between the 2 eras, pre-Civil War plantation society and post-Civil Rights Movement California, is key to the plot. Still, at the same time, talking about Dana's cross-time experiences allows Octavia Butler to explore the traumatic legacy of slavery on Black people in today's world and on race relationships more generally. Kindred is both a fascinating and an important piece of literature. I think I need to reread it immediately before the next time I read Morrison's Beloved. I think the 2 novels might speak to each other in interesting ways. Let me add one thing. When I looked up Octavia Butler's book in order to confirm when it was published, I ran across a story from just a week ago announcing that Kindred will be made into a screen adaptation by Megan Reed. It sounds like Reed is currently considering potential directors. I can't wait to see how the project develops. The second prompt is T is for trope, tag, and many other things. Create your own prompt for T. Well, I think I'll use the T to stand for time and point to Courtney Ferreter's conversation question about the ideal length of videos that we make here on BookTube. There's a fascinating conversation happening in her comments where some people suggest they don't like very long videos, some don't like very short videos, and some don't like videos about just one book in detail, etc. She's also done a wrap-up. Although it seems to be that there is no clear agreement, on average, people seem to like videos in the 10 to 20 minute length in general. But again, there were some exceptions and also some more nuanced answers. I strongly recommend her videos and the discussion in her comments as well if you haven't visited yet. I'll link to her videos in the show notes. With all of that in mind, and after my very long video last time and for the spoiler tag, I'm making an effort to keep this particular video on the short side. We'll see how that goes. The next prompt. U is for unicorn. What's your favorite mythological animal? I'm rather fond of Selkies, the sea people from Scotland and Ireland and other surrounding areas. Although I'd always liked the idea, I really fell in love with Selkies because of the beautiful film The Secret of Rowan Inish about the importance of storytelling and family history and myth. One of my best friends locally has nicknamed her young daughter Selkie, too, so it feels even more personal. V is for Violet. What is your favorite Violet book? My favorite would be the gum-chewing, loud-mouthed character, Violet Beauregard, in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl. I know this doesn't really answer the question you're asking, but it will have to do, I'm afraid, since I don't immediately spot any violet-colored books on my shelf. W is for why. If you have a BookTube channel, why did you start it? If you don't have a BookTube channel, why don't you start one? I talked several times about why I started a BookTube channel, so I won't do it again, but I will instead link to a video that shows some of what goes on behind the scenes here. I think the reason I started BookTube has very little connection to why I continue, to be honest. The friends I've made here are the reason to stay, as well as the way I consider what I read in a more thoughtful way sometimes. This is a pretty amazing place, and I really had no idea before I started my channel. I had watched videos, but not really participated in the comments section beneath. And although I'm still kind of lame about keeping up with the comments on other people's channels and also responding to the comments on my own videos, that is where so much of the joy is for me. X is for Xenocide. What book featuring a xenocide interested you, if any? Xenocide often means the effort to kill off alien life, although sometimes people use this word to mean the killing off of plant or non-human animal species, or even to mean the same thing as genocide. Thanks, Jim, for teaching me a new word. Since I read so little science fiction, I've never read a novel about the more specific meaning of xenocide. Interestingly, sort of the opposite of xenocide could be seen as xenogenesis, or the creation of new and different alien life. I talked about the author Octavia Butler when answering the first prompt, and Butler has a trilogy of science fiction books out called Xenogenesis. I have not read any of them, and I suspect I won't, but for any of you who are fans of harder science fiction, I'd love to know what you think. If we use the other meaning about the killing not of science fiction aliens, but of, quote, foreigners, I'll name a couple of nonfiction books. One is the academic historical work American Genocide, the United States, and the California Indian Catastrophe by Benjamin Madley. Of course, the foreigners in American Genocide were the people trying to rid the land of indigenous residents. Madley frames the vigilante violence inspired by the gold rush as a specific genocide and explains why that word could apply to much of what happened to American Indians in the lands that became part of the United States. The second book I will mention is the brand new book called Committed: Remembering Native Kinship in and Beyond Institutions by Susan Birch, the historian who was my co-writer for our book Unspeakable. The book is not describing a genocide that literally kills people off wholesale, but she is writing about people who were removed from and isolated from their Indian communities, not just by orphanages and residential schools that tried to break up families, but by, quote, insane asylums and other prison hospitals. Although Birch explores ways that these various institutions attempted something almost like cultural genocide, she also shows how American indigenous peoples and communities and nations were able to retain relationships even over time. I'm excited to say that the book is available on Kindle for free, something that's highly unusual for academic books put out by university presses. I'll talk a bit more about this book and the ways the author and the publisher committed to making the book accessible in all sorts of ways in an upcoming video. The next prompt is Y is for YouTube. Apart from booktubers, what YouTube channels do you like to watch? I pretty much only watch booktube here, although my family does catch Stephen Colbert's monologues after the fact sometimes on his channel. Since I love to knit, I always think I'll fall into watching knitting YouTube shows, but I don't have enough time for booktube as it is, so I've basically stayed away. I do really love the channel Fruity Knitting, a family of knitters who could really use your support right now due to a health emergency. I won't go into the details, but if you've loved their channel but somehow missed information about their situation, this might be a time to catch up. Another knitting channel I love is the knitter and knitting personality Franklin Habit. He's funny and smart and calm, and he often talks about his beautiful dog, Rosamond, as well as about the lovely knitwear she sometimes models. I'll leave links to both of their channels down in the description box. Z is for zero. What is your favorite book about nothing? I'll name one of the books I used to love to read aloud to my son when he was young, and then love to hear him chime in for all the repeated or predictable lines as we went along. The book is Something from Nothing by Phoebe Gilman. The book is an adaptation of a Jewish folk tale, very much about making do with what we have, not throwing things away, but adapting them as they become worn. In the book, a young boy's grandfather makes a blanket for him when he's a baby. As the years go by, the grandfather transforms the worn blanket into other things: a jacket, a vest, a tie, a handkerchief, and finally a button. Perhaps the book is less about nothing than it is about something. As I was preparing to film this tag, I did a search on YouTube to see if there might be a recording of the story, and I found one video made by a young boy who you should definitely go watch. Seeing him read the book definitely reminded me of the days when my own son was that young. Well, that is it for this tag. Thank you very much, Jim, for your questions, which have kept me busy for 3 weeks in a row as we've worked our way through the alphabet. And thanks to all of you for joining me here today on Hannah's Books. See you soon.